Hey there, welcome back. Or if you're new here, I'm glad you found the channel. If you love crazy, true Reddit stories, you're gonna feel right at home. Hit subscribe if you want more like this, and let's get into it. My name is Lucas, and I am 27 years old. Until last week, I thought I was a decent son, maybe even too good, because I was always the one to step up when my parents needed something. Was your rent too high? I covered it. Did your car break down? I paid for the repairs. My younger siblings needed help with their tuition. Guess who helped? I never complained because it was my family. Isn't that what you should do for your family? But this week I learned something about my parents that I will never forget, and I doubt I will ever look at them the same way again. Falling behind, and their utilities were about to be turned off. My father had a good job, but my mother had not worked for years, and they were bad with money. Every couple of months there was an emergency, a broken water heater, an unexpected medical bill, or anything else. And at first I didn't mind because I make a good living working in technology. And even though I don't make millions, I make enough. I spent time watching my parents constantly worry about money, so why wouldn't I help make their lives easier? Then, assistance became expected, and it wasn't Lucas that put us in a difficult situation. Is there anything you could do this month to help? Our rent is due next week. Just transfer the money to Mom's account, just like the last time. I initially dismissed it because they were my parents, and I reasoned that if this was what it took to keep them from losing their house, then so be it. However, it gradually eroded my sense of entitlement and gratitude. My younger siblings, both in their early 20s, were still living at home and never seemed to care about anything. My brother was constantly out with friends and always wore brand new clothes, and my sister had a complicated skincare regimen that could easily cost hundreds of dollars. Despite this, I was responsible for keeping everyone's roof over their heads. I started establishing boundaries if they did not take it well. I once told my father that I could only pay half of the rent that month. Then last week, I was texting my sister, just having a casual conversation, when she mentioned the resort. When I asked her what she meant, she became strangely quiet. A minute later, she texted, "Wait, you don't know what I responded." She didn't respond after that, but something seemed strange. I called my mother, but she didn't answer. I called my father, but he went straight to voicemail. I called my brother, but nothing came through. Finally, I texted my sister, "What are you talking about? Where is everyone?" Sent me the picture of my parents, brother, and sister lounging by a pool at a posh resort. The kind of place you see in travel advertisements, complete with immaculate beaches and private cabanas, drinks in hand, sunglasses on everyone, and smiles. I stared at my screen for a while before going through my messages with my mother, who told me 3 days ago that they were having financial difficulties and might not be able to pay their rent this month. I'm not even sure what the word is, but I'm furious. I waited for her to answer the phone again, and this time she answered, sounding irritated as if I was bothering her. "I'm sorry, Lucas. I can't talk right now. We're having dinner." She kept laughing in the background. "Where are you? Where are you? From what I understand, you're not at home trying to pay your bills. You're at a resort, which I assume you bought with the money I sent you." After a long silence, she sighed as if I were a child having a tantrum. "We needed this trip because we've been under a lot of stress, Lucas. You don't understand what it's like to keep this family together." I almost laughed, but she quickly changed her tone. "Don't be dramatic, Lucas. This was just a short trip. Getaway, Mom. This is an all-inclusive resort. You mentioned that you couldn't afford rent this month." Then she said, "You've been very pessimistic lately, always making a fuss over money. We didn't want to deal with that energy. We needed this to relax." I was stunned. So she said, as if to ease the shock, "Look, I'll make things up to you, okay? Maybe next year we'll bring you along, but this trip, this one was only for us for a long time." I said nothing, hung up, and started to plot. If they thought they could take advantage of me forever, they were mistaken. I didn't respond to any of my mother's follow-up texts. I woke up to more than a dozen missed calls from my parents that night. My father had finally joined in his texts, and he was angrier and shorter, accusing me of overreacting and telling me to grow up. My mother was softer and trying to calm things down, but neither of them apologized. I took my time getting out of bed, made coffee, and sat at my kitchen table scrolling through my phone. That night, I didn't feel guilty or half-hearted after everything we've done for you. Through their messages, which seemed to be from strangers, something inside of me changed. I decided that I was done with them. I wasn't going to argue, and I wasn't going to ask for an explanation. They knew what they were doing, and they weren't sorry. The only thing left to do was make sure they never took advantage of me again. The first step was straightforward. I cut them off. There was no big confrontation, no screams. I just went into my banking app and canceled the automatic transfer I had set up to send them money each month. I blocked them, not permanently, just long enough for them to feel it. I knew how this would go. The rent was due in a week, and they had used my money on their little luxury vacation, leaving them with nothing left over to cover their actual expenses. My mother's phone number was blocked 3 days later, but it was still visible in my call logs. By the end of the week, she started leaving frantic voicemails, saying things like, "Please, we need to talk. We might lose our house. You cannot do this to your family. Please, honey, call me back." My father then said, "You are being childish. You are punishing us for nothing." So I ignored each of them. Next came my siblings. My sister texted first, "Mom and Dad are freaking out. Just talk to them." Followed by my brother, "Dude, you're taking this way too far." I almost laughed because they weren't worried about me. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were just panicking because they needed money, and I had no intention of helping them this time. A few more days went by, and then I got an email from my mother. The subject line simply said, "We need to talk." I was tempted to delete it, but my curiosity won out, and I opened it, and what I saw infuriated me. The email started off almost normally with a fake reconciliation request. "We love you, Lucas, and we are sorry you feel this way. Let's talk about it and work it out as a family." Suddenly, the tone changed from, "We don't want to tell you this, but we are in a very poor situation. The rent is due, and we don't have enough to pay it. We never thought you would abandon us in this way, and you know that we rely on you." I slammed my laptop shut, and that was the final nail in the coffin. They weren't sorry. They didn't even acknowledge what they had done, and they were trying to guilt-trip me into helping them again. I paced my apartment with my fists clenched, and it wasn't just the entitlement. It was the outright chutzpah. Your brother and sister are worried about you because they say you've changed and are acting selfishly, honestly. We've raised you better than this, Lucas. Alleviate their problems. They didn't save it. They went on vacation without me because I was obviously the problem, and I would have ruined the mood. However, now that their little fantasy trip was over and reality was staring them in the face, I realized that I was indispensable. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. I could ignore the email, block them, and move on with my life. But something inside of me longed for more than just silence. I wanted them to feel it. I sat back down, cracked my knuckles, and started typing. "Mom and Dad, I read your email. I thought about what you said. You're right, I've changed, and I am finally seeing things clearly. You didn't rely on me. You not only used me, but you also treated me disrespectfully, and you stole my money. I don't owe you anything. I'm not your personal ATM, and I'm done being manipulated." I lingered over the send button. Then with the biggest sneer on my face, I clicked. My sister texted me 30 minutes later, asking what you said to Mom. She's crying. Followed by my brother, "You went too far." And finally, my father, who had never asked me for anything before, left a voicemail, his voice shaking with barely concealed anger. "Listen to me, Lucas. If you don't fix this, there will be my parents weren't the type to let go. They couldn't bear the thought of losing control over me. So I wasn't surprised to hear a strong, aggressive knock on my apartment door the following evening. I took my time walking over and checking through the peephole, and sure enough, there they were. I almost laughed when I heard the message twice. Consequences, because they still thought they had the power to scare me into giving up again. That was their final mistake because I wasn't just leaving. I was about to make sure they never got a hold of me again. Was barely able to control his anger. My mother, on the other hand, had her arms crossed and her face set in an expression of forced disappointment, as if I had offended them. I considered ignoring them and letting them stand there and stew in their own frustration, but I wanted to see it through. I unlocked and opened the door, leaning casually against the frame. "What do you want?" I asked simply, and her countenance instantly softened into something more sorrowful. "Lucas, sweetheart, please let us just talk." I interrupted, saying, "Whatever you came here to say, then leave." At that point, my father appeared, his face flushed with barely contained rage. "You think you're tough, right?" he snapped. "Are you ignoring our calls and sending us?" When I read that filthy email, I raised an eyebrow and asked, "Have you done everything for me?" I repeated, "Do you mean rearing me and feeding me as a child, doing the absolute minimum that every parent is expected to do?" My mother gave a dramatic gasp as if I had slapped her, and I almost laughed when she said, "How could you be so ungrateful?" I asked, I paid your rent for a year. I stored food in your refrigerator. I made sure you didn't wind up on the streets. And when you finally had enough money, you went on vacation without me. And now you're back because you need me to clean up your mess." Neither of them said anything, so I moved aside and pointed to my apartment. They exchanged a quick look and then walked inside as if I had just walked in. They thought I would scream, but I didn't. I shut the door, went to my counter, and took out a folder. Then I turned and put it right in front of them on the coffee table. "What is this?" my father asked warily, looking at my bank statements. I explained every payment I've made for you, every dollar I've spent. I leaned forward and looked him in the eyes to make sure he understood exactly how much I've done for him. My father hardly looked at it before scoffing. "Oh, so you're keeping score?" I said it bluntly because I need you to understand that I owe you nothing, and you have no right to my money. My mother tried again. Her voice was quiet, pleading with Lucas, and I felt a twinge of sympathy. But then I remembered her words. "We have nowhere else to go. Ruin the mood." I took a deep breath and looked her in the eye. "Perhaps you should have considered that before you made it clear that I was no longer a part of this family." My father lost his patience. "You selfish little brat," he snarled. "You sit here in your comfortable apartment with your steady job while your family is struggling, and you just cut us off." "Yes," I replied simply. My mother covered her mouth as though she was about to cry. My father shook his head, his whole body trembling with barely contained rage. Then, without warning, he rushed forward and pushed the folder off the table, scattering the papers on the floor. I didn't move or even flinch. He wanted a reaction. I wasn't about to give him one. I asked, "Are you finished?" And my father gave me a sour laugh. "You're going to regret this," he said in a low, menacing voice. "Mark my words, you're going to regret this," I said, tilting my head. "You're threatening me." He scoffed, but he didn't deny it. I moved forward, my voice cold, and my mother's face crumbled. "You better hope you never need us for anything." My father seemed hesitant, but after a tense moment, he grabbed my mother's arm and yanked her to the door. "You better hope you never need us for anything," he smirked over his shoulder. I never did, and now I never will. I opened the door for them, and they paused as if they were afraid I might change my mind, but I was just standing there silently waiting until they left. I should have been relieved when I locked it behind them and exhaled slowly, but something told me it wasn't over yet. I hadn't heard from them for a few days, so I assumed they had gotten the message. My parents were used to getting their way, but they weren't stupid. They realized they had pushed me too far this time. It all started with a single unexpected SMS from my sister, which came while I was sitting on my couch, browsing through some pointless content on my phone. "Hey, can we talk?" I rolled my eyes. When it came to our parents, my sister was anything but a calming influence. She was always the one to say, "Oh, they're just stressed," or "they didn't mean it like that." But I knew deep down that she wouldn't let it go either. Her message about Mom and Dad being really upset with Lucas a few minutes later made me sigh, rub my eyes, and throw my phone on the coffee table. The thought of them made me angry, but for some reason, I found myself typing back. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was the craziness of the situation, or maybe it was just the insanity of the situation. But what did they want now? She didn't hesitate. "They've been calling me all day. Dad is on the warpath," he said. "You've crossed a line. Mom has been crying nonstop, and they're really sorry, Lucas." I laughed bitterly, knowing they're sorry because I didn't meet their expectations. After a few seconds of silence, she replied once more, saying, "They're just scared and don't know what they will do without you." I typed, "You have to be kidding me. I've been paying their rent for a whole year and taking care of their bills like a bank. They didn't even consider including me in their small family trip now that they're in a mess." "I'm done, Jamie." The response was quick. "Please apologize, Lucas. They didn't intend to hurt you." Her mother said, "I know you don't believe it, but she truly feels horrible." I took a deep breath and ran my fingers through my hair. I wanted to confront her for standing up for them, but I also wanted to end the situation because it wasn't worth the effort anymore. I said, "I'm finished. They can figure it out on their own." I stared at my phone screen for a while, feeling my anger rising again, but this time I was more in control. The pain and frustration were settling in my stomach like a cold rock, and I thought that was all. Then my mother called a few minutes later, and I quickly answered to get it out of the way. "Lucas," she said softly. Almost I trembled because I didn't want it to go this way, and I stayed silent so she could stew in the unpleasantness. Eventually she said, "You are right, we have been awful to you, and I've treated you horribly." "You don't owe us anything, Lucas," I replied firmly, but it didn't satisfy me anymore. There was a pause, and then my mom took a deep breath. "We're sorry," she repeated. "We never wanted to hurt you." I could hear her sob a little, but I didn't feel sorry anymore because I had given them everything, and this is how they compensated me. I told her I was done, and that if you really apologized, you would leave me alone. The line went silent, and as I was about to hang up, she whispered, "Please, Lucas, don't leave us. Don't turn your back on your family." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me, because I had already turned my back on you. You just didn't realize until it was too late. I thought that would be the end of it. But a few hours later, my phone buzzed again, and this time it was a voicemail from my father. "Lucas, you've passed a line, and you're not just cutting us off. You're ruining our family. Do you think this is over? I'm going to make sure you regret it. Just wait." I wanted to listen to it again and again, enjoying the anger in his voice, but I put it down because I knew what would happen next. My brother was the one who would finally put an end to this story, and when I picked it up, his first words sent shivers down my spine. "Lucas, you should be careful. This is bigger than you realize. They are plotting something you wouldn't expect." I froze, not sure what he meant, but the tone in my brother's voice made my stomach turn. His remarks had a hushed, uncanny edge, as if he were hiding something. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process everything that had happened, the guilt trips, and this call. I asked him firmly in the middle of my thoughts, "What do you mean by bigger than I think?" He paused, and when he spoke again, I could hear nervousness in his voice. "I know things have been bad between us, and I understand that, but it's not just about the money anymore, and they won't let this go. They'll make you pay for cutting them off." The words hit me like a punch in the gut. "What do you mean by pay?" I asked. "What exactly are your plans?" My mind raced, but I wasn't prepared to let fear take over again. I don't know everything, but I've seen how they've acted behind closed doors, and it seems like they're trying to influence the rest of the family to turn against you. I feel like they're planning something big, and if you don't watch out, they'll turn everyone against you. I rubbed my temples, feeling the weight of his words sink into my chest like a big boulder. Was I prepared for what was about to happen, or was this just a last-ditch attempt at manipulation? "Is there anything else going on?" "Thank you for the heads up." I finally replied, "I see and understand, but I've already made a decision. They've crossed all the lines. I'm finished." I hung up without saying anything more, and that's when I realized that it wasn't just about money. It was about something deeper, something poisonous, and I knew I had to sever all ties before I became bitter. Suffocating under my own guilt, the next day, the storm hit, and I was sitting on my couch when I saw the first message. It was a group SMS from my parents, sister, and brother, and it was the last thing I had ever imagined. "We should talk because this family is falling apart, and we need you to help. It's not just about money, Lucas. We need your help. Please go back home and be the man you were." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the response button, but I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat there incredulously. This was their last attempt to reintegrate me, but I wasn't going to fall for it, so I did what I had promised myself, and I blocked them all I unfriended them on social media, stopped receiving messages and calls, and had no way of getting in touch with them. A few days later, I received an unexpected visit at my apartment door. When I opened it, I saw my parents standing there looking like two broken people. Their faces were paler, and their eyes were red and swollen. For a moment, I wondered if they had truly changed. "Lucas, please listen to us." My mother pleaded in a barely audible whisper. "We're sorry, but we were wrong. We don't want to lose you. The situation has escalated beyond reasonable bounds. We just want our family back." I remained silent and stared at them, letting the silence grow. I realized that I was done completely when my father said, "Please don't do this, son. We need you. You are the only one who can fix this." They had been using me as a safety net for years, and when things went wrong, they treated me like I didn't matter. Now that they thought I was useless, they were desperate enough to try to twist the situation so that I felt guilty, but I had nothing left to give them. No more money, no more favors, no more emotional support. I had been their lifeline for far too long, and now I was leaving for good. I firmly replied, "You have gotten enough opportunities. I gave you everything, so this is how you, for the first time in years, I wasn't consumed by their turmoil, and I didn't owe them anything." They turned to leave, but not before my father muttered, "You'll regret this." But I didn't care. I didn't feel any remorse. There is no guilt. I had finally gained control of my life, and I was determined to keep my peace from here on out. For weeks later, I hadn't heard from them. I hadn't heard from anyone else. My phone was silent, and for the first time in a long time, I felt happy and free. Then came the final blow, an email from my sister, and this time she apologized. I didn't even read the rest. I just erased it, and that was the end of it. I'd won my family, so what was left to pick up the pieces. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I understand this. What do you think? Should I have tried a different approach? Did I make the right choice? Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories. I understood why I had done what I did. I deserved better, and she said that if I didn't return, things would never be the same again. Stories that are taking place all around you.